What's up and welcome to Ahead of the Curve. This is your host, Jonathan Gellner, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to welcome 78 Sports as a new sponsor of the Ahead of the Curve podcast. If you're a baseball coach and you're not familiar with 78 Sports, then you need to be. The guys at 78 Sports are a full design, supply, and installation team that does it all for baseball coaches and facilities. Whether you're looking to get new hitting mats, replace L screens, put up a new batting cage, or even design a brand new indoor facility, the 78 Sports team has you covered. As an exclusive offer for our podcast listeners, 78 Sports is offering special pricing on your order when you mention Ahead of the Curve. Give them a call today at 844-478-TURF to get your order started. You can also check them out on their website at www.78sports.com. That's SEVENTY8sports.com. On today's show, we have on Kevin Graber, head baseball coach at Phillips Academy, Andover. KG is a two-time Northeast Region Baseball Coach of the Year and two-time finalist for National Coach of the Year. He has led Phillips Academy to 12 consecutive Central New England Prep Final Four appearances, winning back-to-back titles in 2012 and 2013, the school's 10th Central New England Prep Championship in 2016, another in 2018, and just this week, they dogpiled again to finish first in 2022. So on the show, we discuss dogpile stories, the art of communication, defining standards and core values, and how to promote our programs. You're going to love this episode with Kevin Graber. KG, welcome to the show.
Jonathan, thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
No, absolutely. I have been as well. And I one thing I noticed about you, the few times that we've talked, you make me feel better. Like just the you bring, just the positive nature that you bring every single time that we discuss. Like we only talked 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, man, I love this guy. So I don't know, is that something that you try and promote? Is it just your natural personality, or is it something that you work on? Because I would love to bottle that up and do that myself.
Oh, that's an amazing compliment. I think a lot of programs have different mantras, and one of ours for sure is nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. That's Ralph Waldo Emerson.
That's good.
So I try to bring that to every space I inhabit.
No doubt. Well, let's talk a little bit just about, player development. Let's talk about coach development. And I want to rewind to, the day that you got the head coaching job. And you were telling me off the mic you were the assistant, and then you got the head coaching job, and that former head coach was then your assistant. And I would love, so give us a play-by-play, because I'm sure you guys had a great relationship for that to happen, for him to stay on and be your assistant after that. But just kind of walk us through what that process was like. And then we'll go through the vision in like the first 100 days as a head coach, if you don't mind too.
Yeah, for sure. When we arrived here, because this is certainly a family endeavor, my wife Tina and I and our 3 kids, Katie, Kyle, and Kelly, fall of 2008, I was an assistant coach under a pretty legendary head coach named Andy Klein, who was here for 3 decades and had won a bunch of championships and had a pretty good amount of success. But this was my first venture into coaching high school baseball. I had coached in professional baseball, I managed in professional baseball, I'd coached in college baseball, I come directly from the college ranks. And to be with someone who had been so entrenched in the high school game for so long, it was just such a valuable learning experience and such a great baton handoff to just get it right from a guy who'd been entrenched here for 3 decades. And that was just so valuable. My first year as head coach here was the fall of 2010. And I remember, Jonathan, that, that first team I had was stocked with amazing kids. And I'm still in touch with most of them. They're now doctors and attorneys and working on Wall Street and running for public office. Just an amazing group. But, we didn't have many baseball players, if that makes sense. I remember after that first season, I met one-on-one with each of the returning players, especially. And it was my first year as a head coach in high school. So I wanted to get a sense of what their experience was like playing for me. And that was pretty helpful. But the final question I asked each player was, where are you playing summer ball? And the first kid was like, well, actually, I'm going to architecture camp at Cornell. The next kid was like, I'm backpacking through the Swiss Alps with my grandfather.
Awesome.
The next kid was like, I'm going to sleepaway camp. The next kid was like, I'm working as a counselor and training at my sleepaway camp. So it dawned on me that, we had a baseball program stocked primarily with amazing kids, but kids who didn't necessarily play baseball. I felt like we could have it both ways. I felt like we could have kids who were a match for our school's academic program, and that has to be first and foremost because our academic program is no joke. but I felt like we could have kids who are a match for that academic program, but also at the very least, like play baseball in the summer. And it didn't have to be like fancy, expensive travel ball. Town league or local Babe Ruth league was fine with me, but I really wanted our program to have baseball playing kids in it. So,
Sure.
the one decision I made early on was, I was not going to replace those players I inherited. They were great kids. I wrote it out with them, and it was a lot of fun. But then in 2012, that was the first really good team during my era here. That was a championship team stocked with kids who were amazing students, but, also went on to play college baseball. And that momentum has continued on through today. Last year
Mhm.
alone, we sent Jonathan Santucci to Duke and Jack Penny to Notre Dame and LJ Keevan to UMass Lowell, and Matt Sapienza is one of three guys we have on the roster at Georgetown University. Sebastian Mexico's at Fordham. I could go on and on.
Sure.
Um, but baseball wise, I really just wanted our program to sort of have that identity as a potential destination for rock and baseball playing kids who are also really, really good in the classroom.
Sure. So tell us a little bit about that transition too, because you have a standard and a norm, and it's really hard to change that behavior and all of those things. And when you have this, this expectation of, hey, we have summers off here, and then you're like, hey, like, if we want to be as good as we want to be, then we probably need to, like you said, transition into getting guys into the program potentially, or making sure that those guys are just getting more reps in the summer. So what was that like? Was there any pushback there? And then how did you successfully weave that in?
Yeah, it wasn't so much about converting kids already in the program and like convincing them to play summer ball. It was about
Okay.
attracting new kids who were already wired that way.
Gotcha. Okay. Perfect.
That was the program changer for us. And again, both kinds of kids are great. I just felt like we could have, our cake and eat it too and have the best of both worlds. Rockin' academic kids who also play a good amount of baseball in the summer. And that's what we were able to
Sure.
accomplish.
No, that's great. No, I love hearing that. So let's go a little bit about, I want to start actually, let's start with the most recent. You guys got to Dogpile on Sunday of this week, which is amazing. So when you look back, I know that this is really, really a quick turnaround for this, but in 10 years, when you're telling the story about this group of kids that you had, what are the stories that you're going to set, that you're going to tell, or just what are some things that come to mind when you're like, man, this group was X, Y, or Z, or this group did X, Y, or Z, and that's why they were so successful?
Well, one thing, Jonathan, is this group survived what I call the dark period, and that was COVID. In
Hmm.
2020, we didn't have a season at all. 2021, we played 14 games, but there was no championship to play for. We basically just played doubleheaders every Saturday. This was the first season since 2019 that we got to play what I would call meaningful baseball. There was a championship to play for. And it was a lot of kids on this roster that, they had to weather the storm with 2019 and 2020, or 2020 and 2021 without meaningful baseball. And for to be on this journey with them and have them come through this backside and play for a championship and win in a walk-off in the title game and get the dog pile on our home field as the number one seed, it just, I don't want to say it made those 2 years worthwhile, but it definitely was restorative to everyone's
Sure.
mental health.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. So let's get into a little bit of the meat and potatoes of building the culture of a program. So you get the job, and again, it's a family ordeal, and you'd been there before, so you've gotten to see how the program was run. You've gotten to put your stamp on it as an assistant, and then you turn around and now you're the guy in charge. I want to know what were some things that you changed, because every personality is different. So when you're the head of an organization, there's going to be things that you curtail to your personality. So what were some of the things that you were like, hey, we do this really well? Like you mentioned, we've got great kids and we want to, get kids in that play summer ball. But just from a cultural standpoint of like your beliefs, your behaviors, and all of those things this fall, or this next upcoming year, was there anything that came to mind that you're like, hey, I want to do this?
Well, Jonathan, I am very systematic. I have systems in place for everything. I love roadmaps to follow. And one of the things that I did to really imprint my personality on the culture of the program is I developed something that we call here rock to rail. And
Okay.
what that means is, out by our right field foul pole, there's a big boulder, and on that boulder there's a plaque, and the field is dedicated to an alum, Mr. Dick Phelps from the class of 1946. He played here in the 40s, he was teammates with President George H.W. Bush. He's
Cool.
still alive, still kicking, and he's been very generous with our program. So that rock is really, really important to us. We also have a railing in front of our home dugout on the third base side. So this mantra that we have called rock to rail, every day when our players hit the field, they get to that rock and they rub that rock and they sort of, offer up to the baseball gods or the actual God what they want to accomplish that day. Give it a rub, and they are on at least a jog from that rock to the front railing of our dugout. And then when they get to that railing, they rub that rail, and that's rock to rail. That's every day when they arrive for practice or they arrive from a game. And rock to rail also symbolizes what we hold true, what we hold important, what we are accountable for in that space on that field between that rock and that rail. So we have 21 things that we're responsible for on the field, and that's like there's 21 outs in a high school baseball game.
Okay.
And then there are 13 tenets for our guys off the field. And, on the field, it's, again, we hit the field running every day. Number 2, we play with energy and enthusiasm. Number 3, we sprint everything out. Number 4, we're on and off the field in 12 seconds. Number 5 is pretty simple. It's we, not me.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6, we hit unselfishly and situationally. Runner on third base, less than 2 outs, infield back. We're going to play pepper and tap a ground ball and score that run. Number 7, we play backyard baseball, and we might get into that a little bit. But our guys have the freedom to make plays as long as timing, distance, and anticipation fall into place. And they don't need to wait for a sign from me, but they have to do that. Number 8, we always like to win pregame. That's the way we stretch, the way we play catch. We like to win the game before the game, and that gives us an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Active listening is mandatory in our program, and that is eyes and ears on the speaker. And that, you're giving nonverbal feedback that indicates, you understand and that you're buying into what I'm saying. Receptive to learning is a big one. Full communication on anything hit in the air, anything hit on the ground, during drill work, in pregame, infield, outfield. Our guys are always talking. A lot of programs are similar in this way. If you're on time here, you're late. So if we got to be there at 10 minutes before 1, you're there at 20 minutes before 1. That sets you up good for college baseball in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Body language is really important. It says a lot more than what your words might. So we're really intentional with that. In our program, coaches do not touch equipment. If you see a coach with a piece of equipment in his hand, you sprint over and you take it out of his hand and you take care of that. Another little thing is when our guys are getting signs and they're on a base, they always hold their hand up in the air and they show the coach how many outs there are. That's really good for me because I'm getting old and I forget how many outs there are.
Sure. Same.
Number 17, we stole from John Gordon. We just don't allow energy vampires. We confront negativity, pessimism, laziness, and we're really intentional about that. Enthusiasm and positivity are the only things that we allow. The next one is this may sound funny, but we like to say that our bench is made of lava. We get up off that bench and we support our teammates. Sportsmanship is always really important. We win as a team, we lose as a team. We don't make excuses. We play with enthusiasm, but we always respect our opponents. We do not bench jockey. I know that's a thing in baseball sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And the last thing is just you represent yourself. I tell the guys, hey man, you are a Phillips Academy Andover student and you're a varsity athlete. I don't think your parents should have to represent you. I always ask kids sometimes when I hear from parents, I'm like, do you need your parents to represent you? And the answer is always no. I mean, I love the parents in our program, but I prefer to work directly with the kids. So we're really, really intentional and explicit, and they all have these tenets, this rock to rail stuff, in a printout that's arranged pretty pleasingly to the eye, in terms of graphic design, and they have it on the wall in their room, and it's in our locker rooms and stuff like that. So it's on our dugout wall. So we're just really intentional about what it means to be a leader and what it means to play hard.
Wow, we could do an entire podcast episode over those things, and so I want to pick out just a few that I think that are really good. So the first one you said, or not one of the first ones, but one of the ones that I wrote down was that you guys are always talking and always communicating. Mm-hmm. How do you promote that more? I just did a podcast yesterday, and with the generation that we are getting the opportunity to coach, they are very verbal through text and online and things like that. But even the active listening piece or the verbal communication piece is I would say lacking a little bit. And maybe it was always a teenage thing, but I'd love to hear how you promote it, how you teach it, and how you guys go about accomplishing that task.
Jonathan, this team we had this year was the best team, the best group I've ever seen with active listening. It's actually a little scary. Like they're so locked in on me with their eyes. I'm like kind of freaked out sometimes.
That's great.
And they're shaking their heads, yes. And it's really, really cool. But you're right, it is a challenge because today, kids don't necessarily talk to one another. They might be right next to one another and text one another. It's really weird. You know,
Sure.
I,
Yeah.
um, you know, I'm demanding. I'm never demeaning. Our standards are really clear, but I'm not like Mr. Meanie Pants. You know what I mean? We never do punishment running or anything like that. But the only time we ever like run in that way is when we're working on, short fly ball communication.
Okay.
And our infielders say ball, ball, ball. Our outfielders say mine, 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 and then everybody on the field says yours, yours, yours.
Cool.
And literally, if everyone on our field doesn't say it in unison, I stop and they sprint and touch the center field wall and come back. And I tell them, I'm like, hey man, if it were me, I wouldn't want to run. I would make sure my teammate is communicating.
Sure.
So we have some fun with stuff like that. But basically we want to make plays. We want to keep each other safe. Another thing is we take a really, really orchestrated two ball infield outfield routine
Okay.
during pregame, and it can be really intimidating for our opponents because we look like we know what we're doing. And if you've ever read Ron Polk's playbook, it's directly from Ron Polk's playbook, and it's super cool.
Oh, that's such
And
a good book.
every guy in our field is required to say something on every rep.
Mhm.
So you watch us do that, and it's two balls moving around at all times, and everybody's talking. Sometimes
Mhm.
we win games before the games even starts.
That's great. No, I love that. And you mentioned Ron Polk. I think so. The first year I'm coaching in 2012. So I get my first coaching job, and my head coach at the time was like, "Hey, have you ever read Ron Polk's playbook?" And I was like,
Hmm.
"I haven't." Like who's Ron Polk? I'm very naive at this point. I just had focused on players. And so like a week later, this thing shows up, and it's literally like probably the baseball Bible at the time. I mean, I think there's a Kindle version now, but it's literally like
Hmm.
5 pounds worth of stuff. I mean,
Yep.
there's like a script for the audio announcer. There's
Hmm.
there's all of these different things. So definitely encourage you. Got to meet him a couple months ago, which was a hoot. That guy is hilarious. But it's funny how baseball circles run full circle, and that was a very neat moment for me.
And
What
Jonathan, if you bump into him again, I guarantee he will remember you. He's
that's
uncanny like
amazing.
that. I'll tell
That's
you
amazing.
a fun story. I coached
Sure.
against him in the Cape Cod Baseball League last summer. I was with the Bourne Braves, and he was with the Wareham Gatemen. And I have Ron Polk's playbook, a printed copy that a friend gave to me in 1994, my
Okay.
first coaching job, and it was used at the time. It wasn't new.
Yeah.
And I've had it ever since. And there are pages that are dislodged, and I got them stuffed in there, and I got corners on pages, man. I got stuff highlighted. This book is in gnarly condition. So anyway, the last time we played against Wareham, I know I've noticed the last time I'd see Ron Polk for a while. After the game, I went over with my backpack and I had him sign my Ron Polk's playbook, and I pulled it out, and he goes, "Holy cow! What year is that from?"
I love that. That's awesome.
It was just
Oh,
really
that's great.
rewarding. Yep.
Sure, sure. No, that's so good. He told a story about him getting tossed 3 times in a weekend, and now it's an SEC rule that if you get tossed once, then you have to sit
Yep.
out or if you get tossed twice, you have to sit out like 2 more games. He said so. That's at least one record that I've had that will never be broken. I was
The
like, that's the
Ron
most
Polk
Ron Polk
rule.
thing.
Yep.
Oh man, that's so good. Well, the next thing that I love, you've got some cliches that you talk about, and I
Mm,
love like the shared language that you have. So you mentioned that you were demanding and not demeaning, and
mhm,
one of the last ones you said you wanted them to represent themselves. So taking into account the type of kids that you've got, and it may not all be like this, but I'm assuming that their parents are very involved with their lives. I mean, that's why they come to you, and that's probably why they're such great kids, and I truly believe that. But you
mhm.
mentioned that you asked them to represent themselves and not have the parents do that for them. Like walk us through. So I'm intrigued because
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, you get a parent email. What is your response to that? And then you're talking with the kids because again, it's they want to be involved in their lives, and I would just love to hear how if you were me and I wanted to develop a similar system
Mhm.
tomorrow. If I got the head coaching job at X, Y, or Z high school tomorrow, how would I implement something similar to that?
Well, one thing that's important to know about where I work is, I'm a faculty member at Phillips Academy, Andover, and it's just a
Mhm.
little bit different. We're a boarding school.
Sure.
Boarding
Oh yeah,
schools
that's
are
true.
a
That's true.
are a New England thing. These, we were founded in 1778 during the American Revolution. We're perhaps the most prestigious private school in the country. We have 1,200 students, and we have kids from 50 states and 46 countries, and they live on campus here. We have a 600-acre campus, and they live here in dormitories like college kids would. And the adults are here as well, because again, they're kids. They're boys and girls. They're 9th through 12th graders. So 95% of our faculty live on campus here at the school with their families with these students. So we get to do a lot of different things. For instance, I'm a dean in our office of admission. I help run a dormitory. I'm an academic advisor. I teach a class. I'm the advisor to our senior class. I volunteer to chaperone everything under the sun. And so the kids are literally here without their parents. And they get really, really good at advocating for themselves. Another thing I would say, Jonathan, is that our school is really selective. We have a 9% admit rate. So 91% of the 3,500 kids who apply to our school, we can't offer admission to. And so every one of these kids we have at this school, they are all kids who love school. They're
Mm-hmm.
really good at school. They really wanted to come to Andover. There's no
Sure.
apathy about academics. They love to do stuff. The kids aren't locking themselves in their dorm rooms. We offer admission to kids who are really, really nice. So it's been a dream group of kids that I get to work with. And I haven't had a lot of drama. I haven't had a lot of parent drama as well. And
No,
another thing
that's
about our
great.
baseball program is, we've had a lot of success, especially since 2012. But I've never had more than 24 kids try out for varsity baseball, and we keep
Really.
18 at the varsity level, and I play everyone. So
Mm-hmm.
we just had a lot of happy campers in our program, man. It's
Yeah,
it's
no
it's
doubt.
it's just been like a dream. It's one of the things that's kept me here all these years because I've had some other opportunities, but I look at them, I'm like, is that really better than what I'm doing now?
Mm-hmm. No, that's really, really good. So let's talk a little bit about, okay, so you've got these, I'll say 21 standards, and you may refer to it differently. So
Yeah.
can you give us an opportunity, and you did do this with the communication piece, but I would love like a tangible thing of, okay, so I had this one particular young man who didn't uphold this standard, and then how did you help correct him in that manner? Because you mentioned you don't do punishment running unless it's like within the team for communication. So I would love to hear, your thoughts on how do we correct that behavior differently.
Yeah, we have, the one thing that's great about clearly defining what your program's core values are is that you give the kids the opportunity to understand each of them and agree
Mm-hmm.
with all of them.
Sure.
You know, if you're not on board with everything that we do here, you can't be part of the program. And so
Got
that
it.
gives the opportunity to have really, really honest and open and clear conversations if a kid does kind of step out of line during the course of the season. It's like, hey, remember we talked about this and you did this. That's in contrast to what our core values are. And you can't argue with that. One thing I've learned is that you have to communicate because when you don't communicate, that space is filled with negativity 100% of the time. That space is filled with whatever a kid wants to fill it with, whatever a
Yep.
parent wants to fill it with. So I'm very, very clear at the onset. I pretty much cover anything that could possibly, come up. And, we have these off the field core values as well. Number one is always repping. That means that our players, have a great responsibility in representing our program. There's a light that shines on them. If they step out of line, if they do something that's in contrast, with our code of student conduct, it's not that kid that did it. It's like the baseball team that did it. So they need to know that they're kind of losing their identity a little bit. It's other things like be our hardest worker, spark energy and enthusiasm, model mental toughness, connect with teammates, challenge teammates, compliment teammates, support teammates, confront negativity and laziness, check in with coach to see what you can do. Be a servant leader, and we define what all these things mean, and we're constantly checking in with them. I actually asked them to give me examples of, what did you do in terms of like confronting negativity and laziness so far this season, and that really makes them accountable.
No, I love that. And it's such a, I love your refreshing take on coaching. I mean that in the most sincere form because it's, when I was growing up, and I'm sure when you were growing up, it was an extremely different relationship
Yeah,
with players. And to me, like, and you can definitely tell, like, you managed in professional baseball, so you know how important it is to have those conversations, and how important it is to, put the player first, and it's no longer a transactional relationship. And that just, you ooze that. And I just wanted to take a second to say thank you, for helping me along that journey, especially with coming up with tangible ways to be able to do that. Because,
Yeah.
you're doing it on an everyday basis as a head coach at a high school. And yes, you have positives and negatives with your job, but you're also being able to accentuate what you have and continue to mold those young men that are underneath your program, which is awesome.
Well, Jonathan, that's a great point. And thank you for that. I managed in professional baseball for a number of years in the mid 90s. And back then, I received a piece of advice, from front office and from my agent. And that was, in dealing with players as a young manager, professional baseball, everyone said you got to be friendly, but not familiar. The players, they really need to know, like, they're the players and you're the one in charge. I've changed in that regard big time. And, what I know now is today's kids don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And I think that's a really, really, really good thing. We as coaches have so much to offer. For me, it's breakfast with a kid in the morning, checking in about academics or social life, stuff that has nothing to do with baseball. It's taking the team bowling. It's knowing the words to the songs they like. Like, I'm always singing and dancing at practice. I know that's not for everybody, but I'm always doing that kind of thing.
Sure.
It's asking how their families are. It's high-fiving the little brother or little sister during the games. It's so much better for my mental health, knowing that I'm doing what I can to make this kid's life better and baseball more enjoyable than, like, my method of coaching is, like, just crapping on kids. That's not good for anybody.
Sure. Well, to me, it sounds like you want to run a program that's disciplined but enjoys coming to work. I guess to work, enjoys coming to play every single day.
Yeah, I said before, demanding but never demeaning. That's something that's really, really worked for me. So again, we clearly define what our core values are on the field and off the field, and we hold them accountable. But they're kids, and we absolutely have a gentle touch in the same vein.
Sure, no doubt. No, I love that. So one of the things that I and we've talked about this off the mic, you're a master graphic designer and video editor. And so how much has that grown the program? Because I'm looking at it from the outside in, and I know how big social media is, but I'm looking at, like, I followed you guys and the different pictures and graphics that you put out. I mean, you guys run it looks like a professional organization, but you're also highlighting the good, you're giving updates, and it's really neat. Like, that's the first thing that I noticed was the guys running from rock to rail. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. That gets me intrigued in hearing more about this. But tell us a little bit about, your purpose behind it, and any coaches that are wanting to do something similar that may not have the gift that you do. What are some ways that you found to help that to be a successful promotion of your program?
Oh, thanks for pointing that out. I bring a unique skill set for one reason, because, when you coach in college baseball, as I did for years, you often do other things in addition to coaching college baseball. So I was actually a sports information director for 10 years. And college sports information, that's no joke, man. You publicize entire athletic departments. You learn graphic design, you learn web design, you write press releases, you do game programs, photography, event management, all that stuff. And I just, I brought all of that experience and all those skills with me to this high school program. And as far as high school programs go, or even college programs for that matter, we were really the first to flood social media platforms with content. Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, our YouTube channel. If you've been there, if anybody wants to visit, it's on YouTube. Just search Big Blue Baseball and you'll find our channel. I have literally thousands of videos on that channel broken up into playlists. I do full highlight packages for after every game we play. I do recruiting videos with game highlights for pretty much every player in our program. I do it all myself, no expense to families. It's truly a passion project for me. And I'm really intentional about how our graphics look and how our highlights look, especially. I think branding is really, really important. For example, we never do, like, full field highlights where, on your smartphone, you see an entire baseball diamond and you watch it and it looks, you can't tell what's happening because the players are so small. They look like ants. I think of highlights more cinematically, more like Steven Spielberg might. We're very cinematic, lots of close-ups, lots of pans, edits to different camera angles. I spend way too much time on it, but I love it. I'm a total Photoshop, Illustrator, iMovie, Adobe Premiere geek.
That's awesome.
I don't think there's another high school program in the country that comes close to doing what we do in this regard. And the players love it, man. It really does help build a culture of pride in our program, making sure the way we play, our style of play passes the eyeball test, because in everything they do, I should say, like I show them on video. Like after
Mhm.
every game, we'll do a classroom session, and I'll just fire up every one of their swings from the entire game, and we'll just talk about swing path, or if you don't make a hard turn at first base, like it's up there on the big screen for everybody to see. I get a little Bill Belichick like in that
Sure.
regard. I mentioned Bill because he's actually an alum of Phillips Academy Andover.
Oh,
So
cool. That's awesome.
so the video, it does a lot in terms of branding. It does a lot in terms of of building just a pride in the program with the guys, and it's so valuable as a teaching tool.
Oh, that's great. So, going back to you using it as a teaching tool, you mentioned after games. So, I'm okay. So let's say that I'm taking over a program tomorrow and I want to implement the same thing, and I'm going, okay, so we just played 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and what's the most beneficial way that you found to review games? Because we play 4 or 5 times a week, and I'm trying to find that balance myself of going through and finding teaching points, but not wasting their time and my time trying to find different things. And I like scrolling through video and trying to find one clip might take 3 or 4 minutes, and that adds up over time. So give me some teaching points.
Yeah. So after every game, like right after every game, um, for home games, I actually have four cameras.
Okay.
So we have a student manager with a really nice camcorder who films from our dugout. When we are on defense, she films our pitcher, uh, gets his windup and his delivery, and then she follows where the ball is put in play. So if it's hit to the shortstop, she gets the shortstop fielding it and throwing it to first base, and then we get guys celebrating and stuff like that. And then we're on offense, she focuses on our hitter. Hitter puts the ball in play, then she focuses on that hitter rounding the bases and the lead runner doing whatever that lead runner is doing as well. So that's when I say cinematically, we do that instead of filming a full field. Um, but we also have a camera mounted on our third base dugout. I have a camera mounted on our first base dugout, and I have a camera mounted on our backstop. So after every game, I have four camera angles of every play that happened. And I sit there on my
That's
laptop
awesome.
in the living room on my couch, and I go through every play, and I cut for a single game. It's typically an 8-minute highlight video that we put up on Instagram. We link to from Twitter. I put it on my Facebook account, and it goes up on our YouTube channel. And during the course of cutting that highlight video, of course, I see everything that happened in that game. So the stuff I see that we did well and the stuff I see that we could do better, I drag into separate folders so we can watch it on the big screen the next day as a team. For instance, this season, man, we just had a rash of barrel dumping and weak pop-ups.
Hmm. Sure.
And the guys can't feel it. Like they don't know they're doing it. If I tell them they're doing it, that doesn't really do much good. But when I show the barrel dumping, when I show they're not on plane with the pitched ball, then they're like, oh, I
Hmm.
see.
Sure.
So it just really helps them understand, we're doing this drill work today to get you a feel for getting flatter through the zone. We want line drives and hard ground balls because we're just making life too easy on the defense.
Sure.
Um, so that's an example of how we use video and how we show the guys and how we get buy-in on what we can do better. Our practice plans, once the season gets going, are 100% dictated by what we did not do well in the last game.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, and so at the beginning of the season, I rely on practice plans from years past. But as the season progresses, our practice plans evolve based on what I see, and a lot of what I see comes on video because I just am obsessive about watching everything that happen in every game.
No, that's really, really good. And I love hearing that and seeing that. And, speaking with players, I'll ask, who's your favorite player? Who's your favorite team? A lot of them have favorite players, but, I'll ask them, hey, did you watch this game last night? And they're like, no, I saw the highlights.
Mhm.
So they're open to doing that. And, one of the things that I even like if I miss a game on, Major League Baseball Network, I'll go back and I'll watch the compressed version, which is like, 5 to 8 minutes long.
Yep.
And I don't feel like that's a chore at all. And I'm sure cutting it up and doing those things, but 5 to 8 minutes, I think that's if we could get a system developed behind producing that and then giving that to the players to watch. I love that. Like, I think that's a fantastic idea. It's really good.
Yeah, and I do it all manually. Like I don't have a service or a portal
Mm-hmm.
or a company. I just have the camcorders. I have my laptop and me.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
I'm pretty proud of. I just a lot of this I wanted to do for the longest time, but the
Mm-hmm.
technology wasn't where my brain was. When the technology caught up, I was like, oh, I can do that now. It was pretty cool. Another thing that we do is we have a team text group.
Okay.
And, I'm the only person allowed to text in the text group. Our team receives daily texts every day from me. And, they might be about academics, might be about, non-baseball related stuff. But a lot of times it's like a quick video attachment of an infielder making a throw on the run, like we worked on in practice that day. Or, Miguel Cabrera staying inside the ball, stuff like that. One year, you might find this interesting. I actually
Sure.
texted our team. An entire book, The Mental ABCs of Baseball,
Oh, I
in
love that.
one text per day, 3 sentences per text. And by
Okay.
the end of the year, they had read the whole book because of
Really?
what I texted.
I really like that.
Yeah, a little bite because I know personally I don't read anymore. I crush social media. I do video editing. Kids read for school, but they don't read for fun. I used to read baseball books and stuff like that. Ted Williams, Science of Hitting. Kids don't really do that anymore. So this is a way that I can feed them stuff that I think is cool and
Sure.
like kind of force feed them to read a book.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. And for coaches who are listening, so I got to present in Chicago this year at the Illinois High School Coaches Association, which did
Oh, awesome.
another fantastic job.
Yep.
But one of the things that they really liked was using WhatsApp. I don't know
Yep.
what group messaging service you use, but the reason they like that, the reason that we use it, you can send full videos. Group Me kicks people out, which it drives me crazy.
Hmm.
But WhatsApp, you can also see who viewed your message that you sent.
Yep.
And then if they didn't view it, then it's like, okay, now I can have a conversation. They can't just give me eyewash of like, yeah, I'm reading it,
Yeah.
or whatever. So that is, to your point, which is a great idea. That's a service that we have used. It's free. I think it's through Facebook or whatever.
Yep.
But what do you guys use for that? Just iMessage?
Yeah, WhatsApp is the next frontier. I was actually talking to
Okay,
someone about WhatsApp the other day.
sure.
So we use iMessage because we're fortunate because every kid on our team has a phone. So
You don't have that one kid, huh?
no, we don't. So I haven't had to
That's
really
funny.
mess with that, but I think
Sure,
WhatsApp is probably a better one. But I'm sort of I'm up on what's new, but I'm sort of set in my ways for now
sure.
on the text group. But the
Yeah.
one thing I mandate is like I am the only one allowed to
Mm,
text in that.
hmm
I don't want it to become a slippery slope. I don't want
Sure.
kids putting weird stuff in there. And Jonathan, man, we are constantly throughout the course of the year monitoring our guys' social media, talking to them about social media.
Okay.
We tell them that they represent our program, not just
hmm
themselves. So if
Sure.
they post something on Instagram or post something on one of the social media platforms, they're not posting as John Smith, they're posting as Andover Big Blue Baseball.
Sure.
And so, we tell them it's not only what you post, it's what people comment on your posts, it's what you
hmm
comment on other people's posts. There's so many cautionary tales out there about programs, about coaches losing their jobs, about kids losing scholarships that just it's worth the investment to constantly remind them that this is a really, really important thing to pay attention to.
Oh, for sure. No, I love hearing that, and it keeps us up to date too. I hate being on social media all times of the day, but I think being relevant with today's kids. Well, even in my day, if I had a coach that was somewhat relevant in what was going on in the teenagers' world, I always thought that was really cool, and it shows the relationships that you have with them, that you're continuing to stay relevant by dancing and playing music and doing the lyrics and stuff like that.
Well, Jonathan, I talked earlier about like they don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly, and this caught me by surprise, when you produce a highlight or something cool that a kid did during a game or a recruiting video and you put it out on social media, it really shows them that you care. Like you took the time to throw that together and highlight that kid. And I didn't anticipate that when we started flooding the market with social media content, but
Sure. No, that's a great point.
that's been an unintended really cool aspect of that.
Sure. Well, you're highlighting, that's part of that culture that you're highlighting everyone. And I'm sure you are very intentional about making sure that each of your players gets some opportunity to showcase their strengths.
Try and do it, man. I always look for something cool for the best player in the program to put some stuff out there, but also
hmm
like a kid who maybe plays a little bit of a lesser role did something cool, like get that kid out there too.
No doubt. No, that's really cool. So the next thing I want to talk about is like let's talk about the off season and what you guys what you guys did either last fall or what you're planning on doing this fall. What are your time restrictions? How much do you get to see them? And then I'm thinking like fall, so we can start stuff when they get back to school for an hour a day, 5 days a week. I don't know what your, or when you get your players on a field, or I guess could be in a gym. But what are you guys doing in the fall to creating that that compound effect of, hey, we're going to set the tone here, but it's going to pay off in the spring?
I might be a little bit controversial in this regard because I know this is a baseball podcast. But I actually encourage kids. So I guess the long story is, I encourage kids to shut down throwing after summer baseball for sure. I tell them, take some time, be an athlete, play other sports, go to the beach, play golf, play tennis, be a kid. And then when they arrive here in the fall, we have a progressive, gradual, 8-week long fall long toss program based on
Sure.
Alan Jaeger principles. Shout out to Alan Jaeger out in
Oh, yeah.
California. So we put some structure in place. And in the fall, you'll see our guys down on the field in small groups. They'll tunnel hit, long toss, turn double plays, that sort of thing. But we're actually really clear about this. In our program, the fall can never look like a team practice. We don't do captain's practices or that sort of thing. We never want to have anything in place that feels mandatory or prevent a kid from playing a fall sport.
Okay.
We love it when our guys play football or soccer or run cross country or whatever else is out there. I do believe that baseball is the greatest sport in the world, but baseball does entail a lot of standing around. We believe that baseball, we believe that playing multiple sports makes you a better athlete, and being more athletic makes you better at baseball. So, we want our baseball playing kids to get their work in, and they certainly do, but never at the expense of dropping another sport. One of the great things about baseball in my mind is it's a summer game as much as it is a spring game. So you play the heck out of it in spring and summer. And ideally that frees you up to play soccer in the fall and basketball in the winter. Playing other sports helps you learn how to compete as well. Like I played high school basketball and I loved it. And I just learned so much about how to compete that I took to the baseball diamond from playing high school basketball. And I'll never forget that. So I know there's, some Twitter controversy. Some people are like, play multiple sports, and other people are like, no, that doesn't really help. But that's sort of how we roll. And we're a little bit different because at our school we have a 3-season athletics requirement.
Okay.
So we actually can't have fall ball or captain's practices in fall or winter.
Sure.
The kids are playing interscholastic sports, or they're doing an intramural sport, or they're doing what we call life activities. So that could be weight training or yoga or spinning or Zumba or rock climbing or power walking.
That's awesome.
But we make sure that we have a year-long structure in place where kids are getting their work in, but they're doing other stuff as well.
Okay. So let me ask you this. When the season is over and you're turning over your roster, you can congratulate the seniors, and then, then you're on to the next class at some point, in the summer or in the fall. What is that? Do you have individual meetings with players? And if you do, take us inside of what that would look like.
Well, we have some really cool traditions in our last week of the season. For instance, we just won, a New England championship over the weekend, but that's not the end of our season. We always play one last rivalry game against
cool.
a rival school called Phillips Academy, Exeter. We're Phillips Academy, Andover. We were founded in 1778 during the American Revolution. We started playing baseball in the late 1800s, and Andover and Exeter have been beating up on each other since the late 1800s. So it's like our little Cal Stanford, our
crazy.
little Army Navy, whatever you want to call it. And the week leading up to that, we have some pretty cool traditions for our seniors. Like yesterday, we just had our senior class home run derby, and we move home plate to around the pitcher's mound, so some of the pitchers can hit home runs too, and it evens the playing field. They dress up in like Steph Curry jerseys and funny outfits and things like that, and that's fun. Okay. Today actually is Friday before Andover Exeter Saturday, so we have another tradition that we call senior swing. And senior swing is at the end of practice, all of our players line up in front of our dugout, and then one by one, our graduating seniors get a chance to go to home plate and take one final swing against me. And they stay up there until they hit one flush on the barrel that just feels perfect.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then they get to come out to the mound and tell me whatever they want to tell me. Sometimes they want to hug it out. I don't know. I never know what they're going to say. And we have that private moment together. And then they work through the line of players and student managers. And it's just, hugs and hugs and hugs and tears. And we wait till that kid gets through the line until, before the next kid comes up to home plate and has his senior swing. So that's been a really, really fun tradition. And then, after Andover Exeter that following week, we do captain's voting. I have one-on-one meetings with all the players. That kind of thing. So we're probably not that unique in that regard in terms of those one-on-one meetings, but I always want to get a sense of what their experience was like playing for me. Okay. I always want to give them a sense of what I think they need to improve upon. And, having been here for 13 years now, I'm sort of playing zone defense against all the kids we have out there playing college baseball. So the graduating seniors, individually, I beg them to please stay in touch, because there's a lot of people for me to keep track of. It just
Right,
really helps when
exactly.
you help me in that regard, because I really want to remain part of their lives.
Oh, that's cool. While we're on the subject of traditions, what are some other ones that are there any other ones that are unique like that? Because I think that those are two great shares.
Well, we're known a lot for, President George H.W. Bush, played baseball at Phillips Academy, Andover. So we have a memorial plaque on our dugout wall with, a picture of President Bush in his Andover uniform back in the 40s. I designed a President Bush memorial sleeve patch that we wear on our home and road
Okay.
uniforms and alternate jerseys, and that's really cool. And I remember when President Bush used to come to campus quite often, and he loved coming down to the baseball field. And his most recent visit before he passed away, you could tell that this might be his last visit. And so he was down at the field, and he had, I gave him a Sharpie, and he was signing all our kids' baseball bats. And that was a really, really cool moment. And,
No doubt.
after he left, the kids were asking me, "Hey, can I call my mom? Can I call my dad?" I'm like, "Yeah, grab your phone and call your mom and dad." And they were like, "Mom, Dad, President Bush just signed my baseball bat." And then they were like, "Can you send me a new baseball bat?"
Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
You can't take BP with a baseball bat with President Bush's signature
Right.
on it,
No,
right?
it's blasphemy. I mean, that's so good.
But
Uh,
that's the kind
yeah,
of
that's so cool.
tradition we have. Like, no, our alumni very rarely ask me, "What was your one loss record?" or did you win a championship? They asked
Hmm.
me, did you beat Exeter? There's just this,
That's cool.
that's all anybody cares about around here. And I think that when you have that sense of importance, when you have that kind of rivalry, and it goes back so far, and like so many famous people have played in the game, I mean, that's,
Hmm.
that's a really cool tradition that adds a lot to a program.
Oh, for sure. No doubt. Well, let's get into a little bit about conducting practice in season. And
Yeah.
if you want to touch on base running, we can. But I would
Yeah.
really direct our listeners to your ABCA talk, which was unbelievable. And
Thank
so,
you.
I mean, you went out ins and outs and tons of video. We couldn't
Yep.
even touch the surface in the remaining time that we have. But I would like to know, like, so the interesting part about you is you're very intentional about catering to the strengths that you have as a program.
Hmm.
So that was one way, the base running aspect, and you even mentioned that some of the guys in the Northeast call you the mad scientist with base running stuff.
Yep.
But you're able to take the strengths that you have as a program and then utilize those and continue to hammer those out on a daily basis. So when you do get your guys in January or February, whenever you get them for the preseason, I'd love to know, like, how do you win that time? So if you look back in the if you go to the future and look back and say, hey, we won this preseason, what does that consist of?
Our former athletic director used to compare our program to ants on a hill. In
Okay,
baseball,
sure.
man, it's so easy to run a practice, and I see it in youth baseball a lot, especially town ball. It's so easy to run a practice in which one guy's taking BP and 15 guys shag, waiting for their turn to hit. I make sure that our practices have a pace, a rhythm, have a vibe to them. We are
Okay.
go, go, go every day. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but every day I arrive with a practice plan, and I post it on our dugout wall or on the wall of our field house if we're indoors. And that practice plan spells out very clearly how we'll spend every second of every minute of that practice block. Our pitchers know what they're doing, whether it's, long toss, flat grounds, drill work, bullpens. They know when it's going to happen, who their catcher is going to be. They know what we're doing for individual defensive work, what we're going to work on team defense that day. Hitting groups, and we just, we got screens and baseballs and student managers and fungos, and everything's going on. And as you mentioned, I love any and all base running drills, because we are in New England. Our season is an 8-week long sprint because of the weather, so we are indoors quite a bit because there's snow on the ground. And I love any and all base running drills because you can do them anytime, you can do them anywhere. You don't need any equipment, and they're really, really fun. I
Hmm.
think base running is the most overlooked aspect of our game. If you take the time to learn and research and gravitate toward coaches who are intentional about teaching it, and will think creatively and think a little bit differently, man, it can be a program changer for you. And Jonathan, the genesis of that was a story I told, during the ABCA convention. And that is in 2014. I thought we had a really, really talented team. We were like 1-4 or 1-5 to start the season.
Mm-hmm.
And we were falling behind in games. And it was just like, they always say, if you want to shut down an opponent's running game in baseball, take a lead against them and they'll stop running. And that was
Sure.
us. We were just we were falling behind and we were just waiting for the sand to run out of the hourglass on these losses. So we lost on a Wednesday. And that night, man, I pulled an all-nighter and I just researched to the back edge of the internet. And I just felt intuitively there was something between second base and third base that we could do to like jumpstart this offense.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered a guy named Mike Roberts, who,
Oh yeah.
Mike Roberts was the head coach at the University of North Carolina for a long time. He's the head coach in the Cape Cod League. He presents at all the national conventions. His son, Brian Roberts, was stealing like 60 bases per game in Major League Baseball. And I learned the art of jump lead steal breaks. And man, pulled an all-nighter, ordered everything that you could order that, Mike Roberts had written. It came, overnighted it, and pulled another all-nighter, put this whole system in on a Thursday, and we just unrolled it on a Friday. and we've been doing it ever since. We're perfecting it ever since, and I've gotten
Mm-hmm.
better at teaching it. The kids are getting better at doing it. But there was just, I had this thirst to be better, to teach something a little bit differently, to find something that maybe programs in this region hadn't thought about, and really it kind of changed the game in this part of the country.
Oh, that's really neat. And again, you did a fantastic job of explaining even how to teach it, like the philosophy, the teaching, the progressions, and highly encourage any listeners that are wanting to dig into that more. Really go check that out, because I thought that was really what you put a ton of time into that, and it was very evident.
Jonathan, I prepared for that like Rocky Balboa preparing to fight Ivan Drago in Rocky IV.
Oh, that's so good. Well, I've got one more before you go. So,
Yeah.
I've got this in some quick hitters, but
Yeah.
getting ready for postseason. So you guys have had
Yeah.
success in the postseason.
Sure.
What changes for you, if anything, or how have you felt like what has led to your success in the postseason?
Well, Jonathan, I've learned two things over the years in terms of getting ready for the postseason. Number one is those last few practices leading up to the postseason are a great time for review. Bunt coverages, first and third defenses, things like that. As coaches, we tend to put those things in the beginning of the season, and it's human nature to sort of say, okay, we put those in, our guys know it. We're sort of done with that. But man, I've seen so many playoff games won and lost on team defense. Again, bunt coverages, first and third defenses, that kind of thing. We ramp all that stuff back up as the postseason draws near, especially in that last week leading up to the postseason. And number two, postseason is a time when kids tend to put a lot of importance on it. And that makes kids, want to sort of play hero ball. Like slap hitters will try to hit home runs. Everybody starts swinging for the fences.
Mm-hmm.
We tell our guys repeatedly, hey, don't make this out to be more than it is. Don't try and do too much. Take care of the little things. The way we dynamic stretch, the way we throw, the way we take signs, line drives and hard ground balls, throwing strikes, controlling the running game. Take care of the little things and let the big things like winning a championship take care of themselves. I stopped giving fiery motivational speeches because I think I was actually like scaring the heck out of our guys.
Okay.
I was just making it feel like it was so important that they were just they were either trying to do too much or they were shrinking up. So we try to like treat the season like an airplane gradually ascending off a runway rather than, okay, the postseason's here, let's blast off toward outer space like a rocket ship.
Sure. No, that makes a ton of sense. And you hear that a lot of, with energy management, doing a little very well rather than a lot. And so you mentioned ramping that up, but it's a really good, it's hard to practice because, you've got so much pressure on you as a coach too. And it's so refreshing to hear, somebody who's had success with doing that, talk about those same things. And it seems, success leaves clues for me. And that's another one that I feel like a lot of people talk about. I don't know what it looks like because I haven't been in a ton of programs, but that's really refreshing to hear.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So we've got a few quick hitters before you go. And
love the quick hitters.
Yeah, no doubt. So the first one is, what's a drill that your players love that we can steal from you?
Oh, great question. So honestly, our guys love what we call our backyard baseball drill. We do a lot of base running. So there's a lot that we need to do to get our kids to the point where they can actually handle this drill. But when they get to that point, they love it. And basically we have 5 lines of base runners at second base. We'll set up, 4 second bases behind the actual second base, and we'll have a coach on the mound, or it could be a pitcher. That coach can one look, he can two look, he can inside move, he can spin move, he can leg lift and go to the plate, he can slide step, whatever he wants. And it's the runner's job to sort of decode what's happening, be strategic, be systematic, and just find the right time for a jump lead steal break. Mm-hmm. And they love it because there's no signs from the coach. No one's telling them, go or don't go. It's just you and the pitcher, no adult in your ear, backyard baseball style, like when we were kids. So when we get them to the point where they understand timing, when they understand distance, when they understand anticipation, and we've spent all year defining and drilling all three of those things, and they can just do it all on their own. They just really, really like that freedom to get out there and make plays.
Cool. I really like that. Second one is, what is the latest thing that you've learned that's made you better at your job?
Well, something I touched on earlier, and that was that, again, managing in professional baseball back in the 90s, it was, friendly but not familiar. But kids really need to know, they don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And, I'm being a little bit redundant and I'm repeating that, but I'm telling you, it is the best and the most important thing that I've learned in coaching this age group of kids. And I think that, if I do end up back in college, in professional baseball, which I would like to do at some point, I'm going to take a lot of that back with me to that level. I would do it totally differently than I did in the mid 90s. That's for sure.
Cool. And this may play right into it, but what's the most recent thing that you've changed your mind about, and why did you change your mind?
All right. This may be a totally different response than you've ever gotten to this question, but cool. I changed my mind about the preconceived notion I had that sports agents are evil. Okay. We have a kid in our programming, Thomas White, and Thomas is like the best. He's I just love being around him. He's the number 1 rated prospect in the country in the class of 2023. And for a time, I was dealing with agents trying to work their way into Thomas's circle as his advisor, because he's going to be a first round draft pick next year. And I was skeptical of all of them. But I love people. I love learning people's stories. I love getting to know new people like you. And with some of these agents, I just let my guard down a little bit. And, I met and made some actually really good friends with some really great people in that field. And they were guys who weren't even chosen to be Thomas's advisor. And I'm still friends with them. So, I think you can work in a profit-driven field, but also be a good person providing a valuable service. I don't think the two have to be mutually exclusive. So I would say that's something really, really recently that I changed my mind about.
Sure. That seeing the highlights of that kid, it's pretty good. 6'6" lefty.
Yeah, and just 95, 96, and it looks like he's just playing easy catch in the backyard with mom or dad.
There you go. That's awesome.
And the best kid in the history of mankind. First one to pick up equipment. First one to high five a teammate. He's a pitcher, but he loves being in the lineup as a hitter. He'll dive he dives for balls. He slides. He's an amazing base runner. He was in my academic advising group. He takes care of business in the classroom, and just what a dream kid.
Cool. No, I love hearing that. Last one for you is, share with us a failure and how that's propelled you forward.
Oh, man, this is going to sound really weird that I think of this as a failure. But in 1992, my senior year in college, playing college baseball, I was diagnosed with lymphoma. I had played that entire season, unbeknownst to me, with a grapefruit-sized tumor in my chest.
Wow. And
don't get me wrong, I was sick as a dog, but I was going to see the wrong kind of doctors, and I was getting misdiagnosed, and I just did not know what was going on. You're a dirt dog baseball player, Jonathan, like I am, and man, you rub some dirt on and you get back out there. But it got to the point where I collapsed on the field in a playoff game, and they shipped me off to the emergency room and did a chest X-ray and all that stuff, and I was admitted into the ICU at St. Peter's Hospital in Albany, New York, straight away, and biopsy and was in ICU for 3 weeks and went right into chemotherapy, 6 months of that and 3 months of radiation therapy. And so, when you're 21 years old in your entire life, I've done nothing but identify as a baseball player. I had no other identity, never thought of myself in any other way. And all of a sudden, that's not who you are. And now you are a kid who's dealing with cancer, and now that's your identity. Man, that was a lot to swallow. And wow. It was really, really difficult. So I wouldn't say I see it as a failure, but it was something that just really was a curveball that I did not see coming, and I did not know how to handle it mentally, physically, or in any other way.
Sure.
But I don't want this to be a sad story, Jonathan.
Okay. Sure. No, that's great.
Yeah, I was able to come through it. I was able to, get myself back in shape, and I took a job coaching at Lassen College in Susanville, California. Shout out California Junior College baseball. That was my first coaching job. I drove in my Plymouth Sundance from Albany, New York to Susanville, California
Love
without
that.
GPS. I think my salary was like $2,500 for the entire
Sure.
year, and I learned so much. Then I managed in college summer league that following summer. Then I went overseas and played in Australia. Then I started a journey playing professional baseball at the independent level, and then I managed an independent ball, and then I got into college coaching, and then I got my master's degree, and then we ended up at Phillips Academy, Andover. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people say everything happens for a reason. I don't know if I believe that, but it does feel at times like there has been this journey that I have been on. That's like there's been a path that I've just been kind of following.
No, that's amazing. And it's I've never seen you coach one day in your life, but your players are lucky to have you. And
Oh man, thank you,
they're
Jonathan.
blessed. So KG, man, I appreciate getting to know you today. Hopefully we have a lot more conversations because I know I'll be picking your brain consistently, probably the rest of your career. So
thank you. Likewise.
Oh yeah, I love it. So I did want to give you the opportunity to share anything and everything else that you've got. So I'm going to mute myself. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners before you go?
I would say that, I have a bunch of resources that I'm really, really happy to share with people, especially about the base running stuff that we do. We call it systematic chaos. That's our style of offense that I've sort of pioneered. Hit me up. It's my first initial and my last name. It's KGRA, B as in boy, ER, at Andover.edu. On YouTube, got a lot of resources up there. Search Big Blue Baseball on YouTube, and you'll definitely come directly to our channel. Big Blue Baseball on Instagram, real_PA Baseball on Twitter. And hey, whatever I can do to help anybody out, just let me know.
Thank you so much for listening to Ahead of the Curve. If you would do us a huge favor, leave a rating or review wherever you are listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone and tag us on social media. That would help us so much with growing the show and helping others to stay ahead of the curve.